To design the escaping from the matrix bowl, I went through a number of different color schemes, some of which you can see on the left. Ultimately, I went with this design, something a little less busy. These vertical lines are where the segments will be cut. I then went to Vectric, and I drew out the matrix with a stretched hexagon where every segment should be cut so that I can turn it and get a hexagon that's close to the same size and shape as the ones in between. I then used this to create a file for my laser to burn this pattern onto a piece of MDF so that I could glue the hexagons down. I also used the hexagon shapes to cut hexagons on my CNC out of maple and turquoise epoxy. Well, I'm getting ready to laser etch this MDF board, which is what everything will get mounted on. So the laser etch is complete. I didn't show the CNC cutting of the hexagons, but there they are, and I left less than 1/8 of an inch on the bottom just to hold them in place so the router bit didn't break them apart. You can't see it on that, but same thing. So my next process will be to remove the bottoms so that I can get the hexagons free. So for the boards, I'm going to use the drum sander. I put tape on the front to try to keep the pieces in place, and I'm going to use the drum sander to sand off the rest. I'm following the same process for the epoxy. The difference is I'm not going to gum up my belt sander belt because it's relatively new. But this wheel on the disc sander is ready for replacing anyway. So I'm going to use it to grind them off. And as pieces become available, this piece I've done some sanding on, I pop them out just to keep them from getting messed up. So I was successful on most of the pieces. My yield's been pretty good. So I did the laser etching this morning, and I've done a color code for the pattern I want. The circles, the black circles will be black, which will be epoxy ultimately. So W is white, or the maple, B is blue, or the turquoise. So ultimately I will be gluing in the blue ones in the blue ones and the white ones in the white ones, and then the black will get poured in the whole thing, which will also be the border. Before I glue any of these down, I want to seal this surface to help keep the epoxy from seeping through. So I'm just going to paint it with some Type Bond Original. So I let the glue dry overnight, so I am ready to start gluing some things down. I'm going to start with the epoxy because it needs to be epoxied down. I don't think the Type Bond would stick to it. I have all the pieces sitting here shiny side down, so the scratchy looking side is the side that got sanded. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of epoxy on this wax paper. Okay, all of the epoxy are glued down. I'll let that set for a little bit, and then I'll come back and start gluing the maple in between. Okay, so similar process with the maple. I've got them all sitting up the way I want them glued down. These weren't nearly as cockeyed as the epoxy, so some of them didn't matter. But I'm gonna use Type Bond Original. I'm just gonna put a little bit on the wax paper and dip them in. So I have all the pieces glued down in the places where they go. Everywhere in between is black. This is one part of the feature ring, and that's the other part. The two together will make the whole ring. The epoxy is cured for a couple of days, and I surfaced this down to the point where I can see the hexagons below the surface, at the surface in here and below the surface up here, but I can see, and that's important because I need to know where I'm cutting, which will be the next step. So after surfacing this board, I am ready to make cuts, and this is what I'm planning for the feature ring. So I want to cut on these lines. This edge here is the one that is parallel to these, so that needs to be on my fence. And I'm going to cut them a little bit fat so I have room to sand and after I get the ring put together. So I made marks here that make the cut a little bit fat, and that's what I'm setting the fence for. So again, I've got this parallel side against the fence, which should cut just that side of the line to give me a little room for sanding. I'll show one cut and then I'm going to do the rest without video. So that's perfect, exactly where I wanted to. I got just a little more than maybe a 1/16 of an inch that I can sand down to the corners where I want it to be. I'm going to continue that with the other cuts. So now I have the material to make a feature ring. I'm going to cut segments on these longer ones, but before I do, I need to number them so I can put them together in the exact sequence. So this will be 1, 2, 3. Okay, I am going to start off. I'm going to cut these on the miter saw. It's an 11.25 degree angle, which is going to be tough to get perfect, but I'm going to try. I am going to cut the right side of each segment at the 11.5, and then I'll set up a stop block to cut the other side. So I've got the saw lined up pretty much just on the line, and I've got it clamped so it can't move. I'm gonna hold this piece so it can't fly off and get chewed up by the saw blade at the end, and so it's flush with the fence. It's a little out. I'll show a cut. Basically, I've got this stop block here. This is just to get this a little bit further away from being out in here and give me the right dimension. So basically, lock it in, and it's set up pretty well right on the corner, which is where I want to cut them off. So I am ready to make a cut, and I'll show one, and then I'll do the rest without video. So there's my first segment. So after cutting, I put the segments together with 2 hose clamps, and it fits perfect. If it didn't, I would take a segment out to the saw and make a slight adjustment, change the angle to 10 instead of 11 and a quarter or something to make it fit. But surprisingly, it fits perfectly. The final thing I need to do is cut one of the turquoise hexagons out of 4 of the segments. So it's segment 1, 5, 9, etc. This is going to be the escape from the matrix, the hexagon that escaped from the matrix, and it'll start appearing in the upper rings. So I have the feature ring ready to glue together, and because it is largely epoxy, there's a little bit of wood surface, but mostly epoxy, I'm going to have to epoxy this ring together. Now that the feature ring is assembled, and I know the diameter, the exact diameter of it is 9.5 inches, I could go ahead and make the rest of the rings for the bottom of the bowl. I'll work on the top tomorrow. But I'm going to glue these up. It's very straightforward, so I'm not going to show it on the video. So I have the bottom all put together, and the inside turning is done. A little bit of turning on the outside left to be done. I've sanded it flat. I also sanded the feature ring flat on my drum sander and sanded down to where the line through the middle of these segments, which is where I wanted it to be. The top I will turn down once I get it mounted. Again, because this is largely epoxy, I'm going to glue these 2 rings together with epoxy. So these boards are for cutting segments out of, and in order to have the turquoise escaping from the matrix, I did a pocket cut almost all the way through, maybe 1/10 of an inch on the bottom, and then filled them with turquoise. I will make segments out of these when the time comes. So these are I did 5 segments so I could lose one, which is a good thing because I already lost one on that stick. What I try to do is get the wedgie sled set up, cut one segment the right length, and then this will be the top when it's going through the saw. And I made a mark in the middle of the segment and the middle of the hexagons. So basically I can sit this on there, and this is not precision work, but once you get it lined up, I can make some marks that I can use to line it up on the wedgie sled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this pencil line up pretty much with the edge of the sled, and then I will slide it through, which will cut it, and then I'll cut the other end using the stop block so it'll be the right length. So that's the method for cutting the hexagons out. So these are the ones with the turquoise hexagon in them, and I want one of those every 4 pieces. So as I put the ring together, okay, I've got a liberal coat of epoxy on this side, and the only thing I need to worry about now is orientation. So I don't want the joints to line up, but I want this to be fairly close to the hole. So something like that, so it looks like it could have escaped. Okay, all the escape rings are on. I need to cap it off with one gay and then do the final turning.